Hi,
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. I want to take a minute and welcome you here before we bring our county executive up to chat with you. Thank you for coming out. You may or may not know this, but this is National Senior Center Month, so it's a great month to bring you all together and have this opportunity. So thank you for coming. I would want to acknowledge a few people that are here with us today from your local government. Our Town Supervisor Robert Wicks from the town of Lysander, Town Supervisor Rick Zachariah from the town of Van Buren, and Village Trustee Eric Reinagel from your village, and also a board member from our own Canton Woods Senior Center Board, Abby Nelson is here. I apologize if I missed anybody else, but please know that we very much appreciate you being here. And I hope the county executive is going to share some recent news that Canton Woods got from the county when he has his chance to speak with us. So, okay, so welcome.
We did hear how it was Senior Center Month, correct? And so last week we announced a lot of different improvements for senior centers, including $100,000 that we are going to invest in this facility for a new That way we don't got to go to the supervisors or the village and say, hey, we need a new roof, right? Your county government's going to cover the bill. But $100,000. And so, and how much money did you ask for? $100,000. But I wanted just to thank you for letting me come out here. I appreciate it. It's good to be back. I was here a couple times, certainly over the pandemic and then before. But really wanted to just kind of give you a little bit of an update on some exciting things going on, and then take your questions, right? You can ask me anything. And so, right now, in our community, we are in an exciting place. And the reality is that when we think about over the years, right, over the last 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you know, our community and our economy has transformed in various ways. And at times not for the good, and times for the good. And you all will remember, you know, when GE was here, and GM was here, and Carrier was manufacturing here, and Chrysler was here, all making things, right? And then with trade agreements and NAFTA and these things that happened at a national level, these jobs left and they went overseas. And then we went through kind of a different type of economic revival, where in our community we were very much focused in on educational institutions, right, large employers, medical institutions, hospitals, right, large employers, backbone for the community, but we weren't really manufacturing, right? And by losing those manufacturing jobs, what happened is your working class and middle class incomes went away. And so I became county executive in 2018, and then later on in 2019 I ran for a full 4-year term, and thank you all for putting me in this job for those 4 years. And right away, right, we run in 2019 in November, we were successful. I hope he wasn't talking to me. So we go through November, and then we go into 2020, and we get going for our term, and right away we had to deal with the pandemic, right, the 100-year pandemic. And we went through a situation where we, at all levels of government, had very little information. And in the early days, if you remember what that was like, we knew there was a very contagious virus that essentially was coming over from other parts of the world, and the government over there that probably knew the most about it, China, wasn't sharing any information. And so we had to react. And we had to build partnerships, and we had to bring institutions together that weren't usually working together, and bring them together to work together to really preserve and respond to this public health crisis. And that's what really dominated you know, our first 2 years of our full term. One, the day-to-day of just responding to meet the challenge every day, to take care of our vulnerable, to make sure that there was personal protective equipment, to make sure that people were getting food because they were scared to go to grocery stores, to eventually put together the infrastructure where the first vaccine that came out, which was actually quite effective. All these things happen day to day. And I was on TV almost every day, right, talking about it and talking to you, right? And we went through this all together. But while we were doing that, and while we were dealing with the moment, right, we were planning for what life would be when COVID was over. The emergency part of COVID, right? COVID's going to be with us moving forward for the rest of our lives. But the emergency was over. And we needed a plan, because we knew some of the decisions that were made were going to have long-lasting effects. Think about the isolation, right, in your own lives, the isolation you had from family members or friends that may have pre-existing conditions, right, and you're scared to get together with them. Think about young people, right? Think about the kids. The fact that many of these little ones, and I have 3 of my own children that I could watch how this was impacting them every day. Many of these little kids all of a sudden weren't with their friends. They weren't with their teachers. They were stuck on technology that in many ways is dangerous for these kids. From the standpoint of predators on some of this technology, but also this technology is very addictive. If any of you, it's very addictive. So these kids get addicted to it. They don't want to put the iPads down. They don't want to put the phones down. And that's what they're being forced to do. And their social skills were off, and the fact that we knew they weren't learning, because we knew the best way to learn was in person. And so we knew we were going to have to come back from that. We knew we were going to have to invest in our kids. We were going to have to invest in our seniors. We knew we had an economy that got shut down for a period of time, right? And so employers had to let go of people because they didn't know how they were going to make ends meet. And then, so all these different problems, right? But one of the things we learned from early on in COVID was the reality that we cannot depend on foreign countries for supply chain, right? We can't depend on other countries to make products and give them to us, because we did depend on it. And then in the beginning, we couldn't get ventilators all of a sudden when we needed ventilators. We couldn't get gowns and masks when we needed gowns and masks, right, for our hospitals and our nursing homes, because they're all made where? They're all made in China. And so so this is the reality of where the world was when this started. So the lesson there that we never forgot from the days of COVID, when we started to plan our recovery, was that we cannot depend on foreign governments to make things anymore. And we were hearing from members of the federal government, both political parties, that they agreed with that concept, right? And we knew that we were going to put together a recovery strategy to help our people, to help stimulate our local economy, but also we were going to go big. And we were going to be ambitious, because I believe fiercely in this community, and that we deserve better, and that we can compete with other communities throughout the country. And so part of our recovery plan that we put together was massive investments in the White Pine Business Park. And the White Pine Business Park was a business park that was vacant in the town of Clay, 31 in Cognoy. And what it had was really unique. It had the ability to produce massive amounts of gas and electric, right? So people who really need a lot of electricity, right? That would be a good spot to be. It had the ability to produce massive amounts of water to help make products. And we had a lot of wastewater capacity, right? Wastewater is more than just us flushing a toilet at home. It's when anybody makes anything, they have to go and they have a waste product, and we have to clean that before it goes into the environment. And that capacity is really valuable to make things, right? Part of the reason why Anheuser-Busch is here and why it's one of the strongest facilities is because of our water that we have and our wastewater. Most communities don't have that. And so what we had was 300 acres, but you can only build on about 180 acres. So we had something special about this infrastructure. It wasn't big enough. And we started talking to companies, and we started going to site selection conferences all across the country. And we knew that in 2019, when this was all happening, there was a company called TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Company, and they came in and they looked at our site. And they graded our site probably 3rd or 4th out of all the sites they looked. And they eventually went to Phoenix, Arizona. And you can go online, you can go to CNBC, and you can see that they built, the fab that they built in Phoenix, Arizona, they almost came here with that. But what they told us after that in 2020, when we were doing our post-mortem on why they didn't come here, was that the site wasn't big enough. It was big enough for their project today, but if the company was going to grow, that they were going to have to grow in a big way, and you needed a bigger site. So we quickly went to work, and within a year's time, we turned the White Pine Business Park into North America's newest mega site. And a mega site is a site that's over 1,000 acres, that has the ability to produce the gas, the electric, the water, and the wastewater. And as we did that, there was more momentum. We got a little lucky, right? And I'll tell you this one story, okay? And this is a true story. Everything I tell you is true, but this is really true. This is one where people are going to be like, that's not true, right? You're pulling my leg. But this is true. So after our call in 2020, we're in COVID. TSMC has given us the post-mortem on why they didn't pick us. That was a $10 billion project, okay? $10 billion. The largest investment at this time that we ever had in our community was a project I worked on during COVID called Amazon. Remember the warehouse, the robotics warehouse? 2,300 jobs. That $420 million, largest one we've ever had, right? But this was $10 billion, right? $10 billion. And so after the call, I'm a little flustered. Are we ever going to get a shot at something like this again? Probably not. You know, we got this site though. The site can do something great. So I said, who do I know? Like, who do I know? I got a big Irish family, right? I got to know somebody. And so I called my dad. And I said, Dad, I remember you have a cousin who did really good in Silicon Valley. I want to talk to him. Who is he? He's like, oh, you're talking about cousin Bob. You know, his mother was best friends with your grandmother, yada, yada, yada. And I said, okay, what's Bob's? I'm on my computer and I'm on Google. I remember it like yesterday. What's Bob's last name, Dad? I know it's not McMahon. What's his last name? It's your cousin Bob Swan. Bob Swan. Press enter. Guess who Bob Swan is? Bob Swan is the CEO of Intel. I said, Dad, are you kidding me? My favorite cousin Bob Swan is the CEO of Intel? You didn't think I should know this? And he's laughing and laughing. And he says, well, Ryan, you know his brother actually works for you in Adelaide County. Well, you gotta be kidding me. I might have said something else actually. And so I call up his brother Jim, who works for me in purchasing, and he gets a call from his boss's boss, right? That's not ever good when your boss's boss is calling. And so he picks up the phone, what's going on? And I said, you gotta be kidding me. You didn't want to tell me that my favorite cousin, your brother, Bob Swan, is the CEO of Intel. And I'm going on and I'm teasing him. And he goes, Ryan, what if Bob Swan calls you in the next 20 minutes? And I said, if Bob Swan calls me in the next 20 minutes, all is forgiven. This is true. This is so true. And so, I'm not kidding you. On my cell phone, I'm getting a call from a Phoenix, Arizona number, and I'm like, no way. So I answer it, it's my favorite cousin Bob. And so we're going on and on. Bob wanted to know a lot about TSMC because TSMC was going into Phoenix. And Intel has a huge presence in Phoenix. And Bob knew that that would create workforce challenges for him because TSMC will go there and try to hire all his employees. And so then Bob said at the end of the conversation to me, well, tell me about White Pine. Like, what do you mean? You almost got them? And tell me about that. Because he's from Syracuse, New York. He went to Corcoran High School. And so I told him about White Pine. And then he said, Ryan, we're looking at some things. And this is in 2020. This is before you heard about the Federal CHIPS Act stuff. He said, we're looking at some things. We're looking to do some things differently. But I'm never going to talk to you about this again. Because if you have what you have, we're not going to have a conflict that doesn't really exist of being distant cousins. Stop this from doing this. So he put me in touch with a guy, Greg Slater, on his team. And the ironic thing of the whole White Pine story is from 2020 to the end of 2021, and really into early 2022, when we were making that site bigger into a mega site, and we kept buying up land and land and land, we weren't doing it for Micron, we were doing it for Intel, because we were working with Intel during that period of time. And then as the federal legislation gained momentum, the CHIPS Act, and that legislation is critical because there are grants for these companies to offset the costs difference between building here and building in Asia. Because building in Asia is a lot cheaper because they pay a lot less, right? And so as that started, what happened was amazing. All these site selectors that we had been going into conferences for years and talking about White Pine, they all heard that we would turn it into a mega site. And for these mega projects, there was only 4 or 5 of us in the whole country that could do it, right? So our investment, when we went all in, and we spent about $60 million locally to get this ready, all of a sudden we had Intel, we had a company called Project Yankee, who you all know who that is today. We had 2 and 3 other semiconductor companies looking, almost competing for us. And so we got to be picky. And then a couple things happened. Remember we had one governor, and then all of a sudden we had a new governor, real quick. So that governor would leave, and so for a period of time, Intel didn't want to talk to us anymore because when that governor left, he left under some controversy. And so New York was tough to talk to. And then the new CEO wasn't Bob Swan anymore until it was Pat Gelsinger. Pat Gelsinger was from Ohio. And so they started to look at Ohio site and put us in a number 2. But we were very heavily in negotiations at that point with Micron as well, Project Yankee. And so eventually we went through, we had our mega site. And so these processes, when a company is looking at you for a multi-billion-dollar investment, right? They're your company's biggest bet. First is the site. The site means everything. Because if the site can't do what they need it to do, then they can't build a fab and they can't make a product. The second is the community, right? And when you say the community, and this is important, and I want everybody to hear this, because this is all of you, right? The greatest memory technology company in the world is making the largest investment in their company's history and their biggest bet in their company's history on us, on all of us. Because they came here and studied us. They studied us, they studied Austin, they studied Phoenix, they studied Raleigh, North Carolina, they studied Grand Rapids, Michigan, and they studied a site that sat between Chicago and Milwaukee, right? Those are very big names, right? And normally those are names that people in upstate New York think are stronger than us and better than us. But the reality is Micron knew that we had a quality of life, we had school districts, we had higher educational institutions, we had abundance of veteran labor, and we had key assets like the Syracuse University Veterans Center, National Veterans Center, that they could develop veteran talent. That's really important because those disciplines that you learn in the military translate very well into the semiconductor industry, into any industry, right? They also knew that in our community, and I know you know this out here, we have some of the best green spaces and some of the best blueways. And when I say blueways, we're not talking about drinking water, because we have great drinking water, but the fact that you have communities that are waterfront communities, the fact that you have any day you want to go out and kayak or go on a boat or go swimming, you have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different options. That's a quality of life that you don't have in Texas. You don't have that in Raleigh, North Carolina. You don't have that in Phoenix, Arizona. So Micron looked at us, and they look at it, do we have the ability to develop a workforce, have a community where we can recruit talent, and then have a community that you can retain talent? And the answer was yes. It took us a little time to sell them that, but it's important. For workforce development and workforce retention, you need things to do, right? You need vibrant centers, you need vibrant downtowns. your village here, this is your center, right? This is your core. You need vibrant cores. You need a vibrant downtown Syracuse. You need these waterways and access to water. And you need year-round entertainment infrastructure, right? And so during the course of the selection process, when the CEO of McMahon came in, it was I think it's January 3rd, 2022. And the CEO of McMahon's coming into our community, I think coming in to either give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, right? And so one of the challenges that we have in January, that you're all keenly aware of, is usually, snow's one thing, but it's cold. And so we're inviting in Sanjay, my friend, from California to visit us, right? And so it was a beautiful day. The actual strange object in the sky was out, the skies were blue, and it was like 2 degrees. And so we're going through the day, and we had such a great day for him. We took him to the site, we drove him through neighborhoods, we actually drove him through both your towns, down 31. Then we went to Syracuse University. It was basketball season, so I had the dome set up, I had the floor set up. They had the new scoreboard, so I had him sit there. We played some pretty awesome videos for him. And then we went and we met with every higher education president in New York State, public and private. Great meeting. Then we took him downtown to Clinton Square, and we brought him to the new Salt City Market. And then Sanjay's in the car, and he asked me a very simple question, and it was kind of hard to answer. And he said, "So what do you do? What do you do here?" And I went through everything. Right? Listen, fall's the best. There's not a better place in the world than fall in central New York. We got green spaces, blue spaces. You got agriculture. You got agriculture tourism. You got these things going on. He's like, no. What do you do today? And I go, oh, all right. I took you to the dome. There's a mall over here. I go, do you like snowmobiling? No. What about skiing? No. Ice fishing? No. Okay. And so I go, let me just show you a project that I think I'm going to get through the goal line. And I go, it's really an expansion of our zoo. And I took him to the Inner Harbor, and I showed him the aquarium project. And Sanjay kind of gave me a nod. He goes, I like that. And I think he liked that for 2 reasons. One is we do need year-round entertainment infrastructure in our community if you want to be a growing community. And you want to be a community that companies are going to invest in. And for families to have a quality of life. You could see his young families wanting to bring their kids there year-round, right? You can come to our zoo year-round, but we don't have every exhibit open. We've got some good ones. Secondly, I think he viewed us in a similar light then to Phoenix and to Austin. Because the reality is those communities invest back in themselves all the time, right? They're growing, they need to compete, and they invest in themselves. And you need to be aspirational. And that's where they wanted to be. So that was an important project in this process when you're looking at community. And the third thing that the company was looking for was what do companies always look for? Their money. And so we had to compete. Financially, we needed to be competitive at the local level, right? The state of New York needed to be competitive at the state level. You probably might have heard of the state's green chips legislation that was done for this project to incentivize the semiconductor industry, but it was really done for this project. And then at the federal government, you need to compete nationally, right? So the chips legislation. So you put this all together. We had a big announcement. What is the project? It's a $100 billion investment minimum. There's never been a project bigger anywhere in our country and likely the world. And with that, you'll have 9,000 direct Micron jobs. The first fab, you'll have about 4,000 Micron jobs. That's what we're working on right now. You will have a 20-year construction project. And there will be on average 5,000 construction workers working on this at the same time. That's unheard of. Think of big construction projects you've seen and witnessed in your life going on. At most, you probably have 200 or 300 people on those jobs, right? You're going to have 5,000 people on these jobs. You're going to see all the companies that make the tools that go into this facility, all these large tools. These tools are bigger than this building. And those companies, their employees run those tools, not Micron employees. So all the tooling companies, and there's about 8 to 10 of them, all premier companies like Applied Materials, and ASML, Tokyo Electron, Lam Research, KLA, they're going to be here because their employees are going to run those tools. And then think about all the different little products that go into making a microchip. Those supply chain companies got to be here. And so overall, we're looking at a scenario where with all the supply chain, the micron, the construction, and then the ancillary development, we're talking about 40 to 50,000 new jobs, which means more people, right? It means more people. And it means growth. And so we have been successful in doing what nobody thought we could do. But now we got to actually execute. So I'm going to give you our execution strategy, then I'm going to take questions on this subject or anything else. First, we've got to execute on the site. So we have teams that work day in and day out with Micron, Adelaide counties to be on the site, our state partners, right, and then federal partners, looking at the environmental impacts. What are the enhancements that need to be made to roads so that there is not gridlock? And because of this project, actually the gridlock that we have currently in Cicero, a little bit in Clay, but really more in Cicero, that's going to get fixed because of this project, because it has to. What are the impacts on the environment, right? Making sure that we're addressing all those impacts. Mitigating wetlands, think of that. That process will go through probably first quarter of 2024, which is only, what, 5 months away from now. And then you'll see real hardcore construction probably in the second quarter of next year. We'll do some clearing of the site this year, so that construction will start this year, but then things really rocking and rolling probably Q2 next year, assuming all the environmental reviews go the way we think they will go. And then you'll have a product, a fab, that is built by 2026, and then products being made by the end of 26 there. So that's site execution. The second is workforce execution. We have a growing community. We need to make sure that we're developing workforce for the semiconductor industry, but also other industries, right? We have more people that will be coming in. With everybody that comes in to work with Micron, a lot of them will have spouses or significant others that will go and hopefully help make up some of these jobs, but we need to make sure we have enough nurses. We need to make sure that we have enough doctors, dentists, all these things that we're working with all of our partners on to make sure that in a growing community we can meet that challenge in the moment. The third is to really maximize the opportunity. We work every day on our supply chain strategy, and that is going after all these suppliers of Micron and making sure they come here, right? Some would like the rest of New York State to get some of these jobs, but we all are the ones that got skin in the game, right? It's our money that we did to get the site ready. It's our money from a local level to incentivize them to be here. We should get first shot at these supply chain jobs. And that's what we're working really, really hard on. And then the fourth is the community, okay? And this is what we recently finished our comprehensive plan called Plan On. And within that, we have funding for towns and villages to go update their comprehensive plans, to have community conversations about what you want your community to be. What are the aspirations you want to be? What are the things you want to keep the same way, right? And so we are funding that. I know Van Buren, we got done. I know that the village and Lyson are working on their lakefront plan right now. And when they're done with that, I'm going to throw them some money to go update their comprehensive plans. But that's really, what opportunities. And in our plan for the region, right, these are the core concepts. Is to meet the growth, look at center-driven development. And what does that mean? That means that you don't sprawl everything out in ways that folks won't want to live in 20 years from now. We know people like walkable, right? Think of your villages, perfect centers, right? These are center-driven. Town centers, right? Hamlets, these are center-driven developments. And let's make sure that we have a variety of housing options, right? Market rate housing, quality senior housing, right? So that seniors have a place to live and have a high quality of life, and feel okay maybe selling their home. Because there's people that all want to buy these houses, right? Right now there's a market, seller's market. We have 10, 12 offers on almost all these houses. And that means the prices are going up, which means eventually there's more value, but with more value, guess what happens? Eventually the assessments are going to go up because that's the market value, right? So we're creating this new value in our community at rates we never had before. But in one of the ways we got to get it to manage it is we need more housing. So more market rate, more mixed use, right, housing, more senior housing, all important things. And by doing it where you have commercial services and you have green spaces, that's going to be sustainable, right? Not just plop up something here that looks good for 5 years, but then 20 years later, it might not look that hot. You all here have a beautiful village that has water, and that's tremendous opportunities for adaptive reuse of certain properties in your community, but also to build on that. And I know your leaders here are really engaged in that, and we'll be there to help them any step of the way. We talked about housing, how we need an all-of-the-above strategy, because we need to have diverse options for a diverse community. Transportation, we talked a little bit about it, but how are we going to move around in a community that's growing, that has huge employment centers, strong transit systems so that everyone doesn't need to drive if they don't want to drive, right? And these are all things that we need to do a much better job of, but the reality was there wasn't the demand to have different types of transit options, probably until now. We need to continue to invest in all of our green spaces, in our blueways, and create access, right, recreational access. One of the things that I want to invite everybody to, I know it's a little bit out of the way, but not too far, I want you to go to Onondaga Lake Park, and I want you to see the largest outdoor pickleball complex in upstate New York. Okay, right here in Onondaga Lake Park, right? The largest, the best, because I said if we're gonna do it, we gotta do the best. And so, these are the types of investments that are important. We're all gonna live longer. And as certain things happen and technology improves, we're gonna continue to live even longer. And so quality of life is really, really important with that. And taking advantage of the blue spaces is really important. That we make sure that our waterways are clean and so that we can utilize them in a way that really helps our quality of life. And the fifth piece, which I know is relevant in this community as well, is we need to protect our agriculture. We make a lot of food in this community, and that's a good thing, because when you make your own food in your own community, you can take some bumps, and when emergencies happen, you have the ability to help your own people. And so farmland protection is important. With our growth, we can't just eat up all of our farmland, and then we need to help the family farmer, and we need to do more for ag tourism. So those are the 5 ways we're going to get ready for the new Onondaga County. But we want to continue to preserve, the character of the good things, and we shouldn't be scared of the growth, because we're going to manage it in a way where more people paying into the pot will make it more affordable for all of us to be here. So happy to take questions from people.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have several questions, but I'll start with, you talked about agriculture, and yet we're throwing away farmland like it's confetti
Yeah.
to build houses for Micron.
Well, that hasn't started yet. So
It has. It has started for a while, where we are just farmland. How are we going to have food?
Yeah.
You talked about COVID, and yet how much of our food is being grown locally?
Yeah, so we're the 8th largest producer of food in the whole state.
Yeah, but how much farmland have we gotten rid of for housing?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. One, we spend county dollars each year on farmland protection and acreage. The second thing though is this is America, right? A farmer has the ability to cash out when they want to, right? We're not going to tell somebody that you can't go sell your property. But one of the things that we can manage this at the county level is it's very difficult. It costs about $500,000 to build a house, right? Doesn't matter what, right? That's baseline. That actually $500,000 does not get you nearly what it used to get you. And so nobody's going to spend $500,000, or very few people, let me say that, to build a new house that does not have sewers. So the county government, we control sewers. And so the one way of us to do this is, in a smart way, is through what we talked about, through center-driven development. And that doesn't mean there won't be more single-family homes, because there will be. But there's parts of this county, large parts of this county, that are agriculture that do not have sewers, and they will not have sewers. Think about our southern towns.
What about that property behind Tots, which is also a possible heritage site?
I'm not familiar with the details on that, so I can't speak coherently to that. But we can,
Well, it's a large bit of land. Depending on who you talk to, could be a bit of indigenous history there, but who build on it, on forever.
Yeah, no, I understand the concern, right? And that's why a big part of our plan is, agriculture preservation. We said the fifth pillar of the plan, right?
But it's
That's the
fifth.
fifth pillar. No, it's not in that order. It's not in that order.
Food is
Yeah.
really important.
I didn't say that in that order. That's the fifth thing I talked about. So I didn't give levels of importance to it all. But the reality is there's ways to manage that. But part of the comprehensive plans in your local communities that you'll have with your local leaders, zoning, right? That's done at the local level. And that will determine a lot of the same things that can help address some of your concerns.
The other question I had, because like we've had big companies here, and they left. What's the probability that Micron will stay after we've sacrificed all the land and the water? And what if they just decide to go, see ya?
Well, let's put it this way, anything can happen, right? But if the largest producer of memory technology chips, and memory technology is the fastest growing technology in the space, think of your phones, right? If you pick up your phone, you have a Micron product in your phone. Your car, if you drive a car that's a smart car, it has...
I drive a dumb car.
Well, when you get that smart car, it's going to have a Micron product. You've probably heard of the fourth industrial revolution, right? Which is kind of what we're in right now. It is based off of two things. Artificial intelligence, right? And 5G, right? And both of those technologies are driven by memory technology. I don't know if anybody follow the stock market, right? Anybody here look at retirement? Go look in NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA is the major chip provider to ChatGPT, which is an AI, hot AI thing. NVIDIA gets all their products from Micron, right? So if the greatest memory technology company in the world all of a sudden has to shutter their largest investment their company's ever made, there's likely bigger problems in the world that none of us can predict right now.
But my point is okay, so they're paying for most of their water. Who's paying for the rest of their
They're
water?
paying for all the water.
They're paying for all the water? Because
Their
the news
users.
said they were paying for most of their water.
No. So remember, I cut every one of these deals. So
Well, I'm just saying that
the news is the news. The Micron is a user of the water, just like you are, right? And so they're going to be the biggest user of water, so they're going to pay for that. How they'll pay it is the same way they pay it back as a user fee. That doesn't mean you don't put in the infrastructure up front. That's what we do for every community. So Seneca Knolls over here, when we need to make improvements at Seneca Knolls, we don't ask you to buck up for it before we do it. We go and do it, and we use our bond rating. That's why it's important to have a good bond rating, a good credit score, because we borrow the money, and then we get it back through user fees.
Is there any tracking of how many people have lost their homes because of the rising assessment values?
The rising assessment values are based off of value. So nobody would lose their home from that. they may
People
sell
lost their homes
home.
from the taxes,
Yeah,
from
they
the
may-
school taxes especially.
Yes, well, you hit the nail on the head there as far as who you pay most of your taxes to. Because your county tax rate's gone down, so it's never been lower. But the reality is if your assessments are in this market, if you had to sell your house, you're gonna be able to sell it, right? But that's not something
And
that
where
we
would
keep
you,
that
where
track.
would we go? Not here,
That's good.
not here.
I
There's no rents
I
that's
understand.
comparable to even what I'm paying with the outrageous taxes.
Yeah, I understand the point there, but that's not something, we can't, your regional government's not gonna be able to control the free market, right? That's nothing we're gonna be able to do. How you control school districts is you go and vote on their budgets.
Yeah,
And, you know, that's,
I vote every year and the outcome is always the same.
I understand your frustration there. We can show you, what we've done with county property taxes, and they've gone down. Last year, we're coming 11.6%.
Which is good, but I'm just saying not everyone is following, so I'm just saying there seems to be not a lot of concern for people who are on a fixed income, like we're in inconvenience, we're hogging the housing, you know.
No. I think there's a lot of concern for people on fixed incomes. That's why we're doing what we're doing. You know, I think that's why you heard me talk about more housing options.
Yeah, but the housing, like we could rent for more money than for being in our home.
You may be able to in this market. I mean, the reality is, the only thing that's gonna stop rising assessments at the rate there is more houses. Because that means that what's happening, this is what's happening, okay? You put your house in the market, okay? You put it on for $300,000, say. You're going to sell it at $380,000 because there's 10 people in a bidding war and they need somewhere to live, right? So how do you get that bidding war to slow down? You need more inventory. It's fact. You need more inventory.
Which
So-
consumes the farmland.
Not necessarily, not through center-driven development. There's enough infrastructure already in place, where there's sewers today, where you can accommodate thousands and thousands of units. Yes, sir.
Employee retention is the topic. I knew your Uncle Bob brought it up already, he was
Yeah.
concerned about Phoenix. I'm thinking about the jobs pay $20, $25 an hour. That's a good salary for most people around the county, $25 an hour, that's 50 grand a year. They talk about the jobs at Micron's gonna be 100 grand a year?
Well, the average salary of Micron will be more than that, but you're looking at a blend between technicians and engineers, right?
Okay, now,
Yeah.
I'm gonna take the next step.
Yeah.
I work for both semiconductor companies on Dow County, MS Kennedy, division of Anaren. I worked as a supply chain there. Then I was lucky to work at Knowles in Casanova, dielectric glass. Both make computer chips and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about how those two particular places, and many others, are gonna retain their employees if they have these wonderfully paying jobs close to the home they need.
Yeah, so TTM Amaran's a company we're very close with,
Yeah.
and we're, I think we're, let me give you another example. You've heard of JMA Wireless?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, JMA Wireless makes 5G manufacturing, and they have a location in Clay, and then the old coin factory in the south side of the city of Syracuse, they have a 5G campus.
Right.
So one would suggest that another technology company, same example as TTM, that they would be scared for a company like Micron to come in from talent, right? That's where you're getting at, is how to keep it. Their owner, John Mezzalingua Associates, their owner was part of our kind of site attraction team for Micron. Because, and his whole thing is that you cannot pay for the branding that the region now has. And it's easier for me to recruit talent to the region because very few people from a recruitment standpoint, not developing the talent, are going to think about this. This makes sense, right? If there's only one employer that you can go work for in a community with your skill set, are you going to go and move your family to that community? Or are you going to go to a community that has multiple employers, where if it doesn't work at that company, you can go and work at that company or that company. And so the opposite is actually true with people I talked about that day in January, we had a roundtable at Salt City Market, and Lockheed Martin was at the table, and Saab Census, JMA, Corning was there, as was Cryomac, another great company here locally in the semiconductor space. They had great conversations, and so they're very excited. And will some of these companies lose workers to Micron? Yeah. But they'll be able to recruit workers and compete to maybe take Micron's workers too. But it's going to raise wages.
Yes.
It's going to raise wages, yeah. Yeah.
Now, you talk about affordable housing all the time. Now, my family, they make more than minimum wage, but they can't afford to go get apartments, they can't afford to buy a house, you know, because they're not making enough. So how is your affordable, there's no way any of us can go afford a $1 million, a $500,000 house,
Right.
especially on income. Well, my
I can't
kids
afford
can't do it
half
either.
my house.
But my kids, so why are we building all of this stuff? What is gonna be affordable
Yeah.
for these kids?
and
They
that's
can't do it now.
So I think what's important is you define what affordable is, right? Affordable housing, it's a stigma. That means it's housing where people don't go to work and crime comes, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is what we're talking about, affordable housing, is really rents with what, maybe $1,000 to $1,600 a month that people can afford.
They can't afford that, my kids can't afford that, and they're making more than minimum wage.
Yeah, well, I think overall, but that's what the you know, you're probably unlikely to see rents for $600 or $700. You won't see them today, and so the you know, that's the reality is you need more housing, and the more housing you get, at some point, if the market gets saturated, the rents will come down. But until you get to the point, it's the same thing in the buyer's market, in the rental market right now.
But that leaves my kids, you know, I've got two family members living with us,
So-
they can't afford anything.
Yeah, so one of the things we're doing, and again, government can't solve this ourselves. This is a new problem in our community. This wasn't a problem 3 years ago. So what it is the community's seeing growth and it's seeing fast growth. So one of the things we're doing is we have a fund called O-CHIPS. And so what we're doing is we are incentivizing projects that, you know, with that gap funding. Think about maybe costs with inflation of infrastructure going up. Or think about you could have gotten a loan for 5%, but now it's 7%. And that costs a lot of money on a big number. So you can apply for one of these grants, and the goal is just to get more units on board. And a lot of the units are what you would define as affordable housing, which essentially is like rent-controlled rates. Some of them are mixed income, right? So you have market rate here, but some rent-controlled. Some are just market rate. Some are senior housing projects. And so our goal is to get as much inventory on the marketplace as possible in a sustainable way, not just sort of sprawling way, so that the market itself slows down and you get the appreciation growth that's a little bit more sustainable for people.
That's good for the future, but right now, it doesn't help any of us.
I understand
And it doesn't
that.
even help us. I mean, you say, go sell your house.
Oh, I
We
didn't
could
say that.
not afford we can't even afford to live in our house that we lived in for 30 years because the taxes are more than his income once a month. And you know, where do we get the help? I mean, down the road, that's great, but it's
So
not
we-
right now.
We just passed legislation that based off of, for seniors, based off of your income now, you get even more enhancement.
Oh.
And so that's what we did. We're doing everything we can at the local level for the tools in the toolbox that we have, right? Your overall county rate that you pay is going down. If you're a
But our
senior.
assessment went up, therefore now our taxes are high.
I don't control that though.
I
There's nothing
know,
I can do.
that's what happens, you
Yeah.
put this down,
Yeah.
and then this goes up, so it
It
ends up
didn't,
being
not
more.
because of it though, right? Those are two things. You didn't merit the savings because at the same time your assessment went up.
Exactly.
But the reality was if we didn't bring your rate down, you would have been paying even more. And so one has nothing to do with the other, right? Your assessment, but I understand, that's why we're doing what we're doing. County government's never invested in housing before. Why? Because we don't have code officers, right? We don't do it. The only reason we've gotten into the business in an incentive way is because the reality is that we have this growth here, and we have to get more units online to really stabilize this. But people do need to look at your taxing authorities, and are your taxing authorities doing what you want them to do? And you reference school districts. You've got a great school district. They as assessments grow, they get more money. Their tax base grows. Do they need to take all of that, or can they give some back? Right? Those are questions you should be asking, because what we're doing is we're giving most of it back, if not all of it back, when we get growth. Over here, and then we'll come over here.
Where is all this new construction gonna take place, and where are the kids gonna go to school?
Yeah, so you'll see, I think the immediate boom will be in the northwestern suburbs, with some parts of the city.
That means us?
Yeah, I think you're gonna see some growth. Clay, obviously, Cicero, those are gonna be the main
I
areas.
mean, not Baldwin.
No, you're western suburb, right? So you're Lysander, Van Buren are gonna see growth opportunities. The reality is most schools, were built for more kids, right? And so the one thing that in this country that, I'm not worried about for the first phase or second phase of the growth is schools, because, the buildings that they had online, had way more kids in them, for a long period of time. We're having fewer kids at any point in our country's history right now.
And I already have to strategize when I leave the post office parking lot. You have to go in the wrong direction and then turn around and come back, because there's no way, you'll be there for 15 minutes. That's now, nothing's even started yet.
You talking about around the school?
Right here in town. You go to the post office, you go to pull out, and there's like 30 cars going this way. You say, then you look up, and there's 25 going that way. Then there's more coming this way. And finally, you reach out, and you go all the way around, and you take a roundabout way just to go home.
Well,
And none of this is even started yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, look at the traffic from the facilities is fantastic. Anytime you have a development in your community, you go through an environmental review process, and that goes through any traffic impacts and traffic studies, so.
But I think it's already bad. It's already over.
You might be right,
I know I'm right.
But that doesn't mean that mitigation for growth in your community won't happen.
They're gonna build new roads, I mean, they're gonna.
Sometimes you have to, yeah. For Micron, there'll either be a new on-ramp for Cognoy, potentially a new exit off 81 for Ludlow.
That's 10 miles from here.
I get it, but I'm giving you an example. You're talking about speculative stuff. I'm talking about what we know is gonna happen for the project. And so because if you go through an environmental review, it's called the secret process. Every project has to go through one. So in your community, if there's gonna be a big housing development, for example, or a big mixed-use housing project, there's gotta be an environmental review. They have to study how these people are gonna move around and what peak times. And then the answer may be, you can do it, but you gotta fix this, or this, right?
I mean,
That's how that works.
I will have bought the farm by the time this whole thing takes place. I'll be dead. But this community is not gonna be what I want it to be. Anyway, whatever.
You did a good job, by the way, in all the thought process. I don't think the general public knows how much is involved in negotiating with billion-dollar companies. I think you did a good job, and thank you for the $200 checks to all the seniors.
Senior stimulus checks.
Yes, do it again, please.
Yeah, those are good. Yes, ma'am.
Brian, I'd like to know if you're running again.
Yes, ma'am.
You are. I think you've done a wonderful job.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Good.
I've been riding down 370, okay, for 50 years. I watch all these farms disappear,
Yeah.
and houses are getting there. Then they tell me that they're gonna give a grant. The grant comes from my tax money,
It does.
so I'm giving it to them. Sorry, I don't have that tax money that you're talking about. Now we're gonna have to have electric cars. Oh, really? Where is the electricity gonna come from? And then I also look at the water. They talk about how much water Micron's gonna use, and it's gonna go in and destroy the Onondaga Lake that we have now, that we talk about. And you tell me no, until you watch and look and see how much is going on with the amount. You can tell me
Yeah,
anything you want to.
so ma'am, let me go through that, okay, because you know, no offense to a 25-year-old news reporter that puts something on the air, but they get that information through what's called an environmental review, okay? And what you do in an environmental review is you put in data that is worst case scenario, because if you don't, somebody can come in and litigate and sue you, and it slows down the project.
It slows it down, it doesn't make it disappear.
Yeah, so
And what happens to Racket Lake?
Yeah, so let me tell you about the reality. The reality is the numbers that were put out in the media were worst case numbers, and they did not factor in on-site recycling of the water. And so
But they did some of it, when they're talking about it without the lake.
yeah, so
It's not gonna be there anymore for swimming.
ma'am, so the water's gonna come from Lake Ontario, not out of
Oh, really? And Lake Ontario is gonna supply us for the next 100 years?
Yes.
I don't think so.
If we
Build pipelines.
Lake Ontario is a great lake, right? So for,
It's a great lake,
so
up to a point.
yeah, so
But it cannot, you're gonna eliminate the lake and take
No.
care of us that
no.
way.
So right now we have the legal ability to pull.
You have the
so-
legal ability,
Yeah.
that's your answer.
I want to
No,
hear his answer.
No, ma'am, this is the reality, right? So right now you can pull so much water a day from Lake Ontario.
Yeah.
That's not gonna be
That's
impacted by
always
Micron at all. We have an authority for
No,
so
but
much
what
a day.
about the water that's coming up from Micron down to clean the
Yeah. So how
Onondaga
that
Lake?
will, it won't go into Onondaga Lake. So
Yes,
where-
it will,
no,
because that's
I'm
where the
I'm gonna tell you
water.
how it goes. I'm gonna tell you how it goes right now, because we manage it, right? So I oversee it, okay? So what it will work is the Oak Orchard Treatment Facility is in the town of Clay. And so, right there, and just like you have Seneca Knolls here. And so what will happen is the water will come in from Lake Ontario. It will go there, it will get used, it will go through recycling on site. At some point, they will have a byproduct that needs to get treated in addition to the on-site treatment. It then will flow into Oak Orchard's wastewater treatment facility. We then will clean it, and once we're done cleaning it,
How long is it gonna take?
we then disperse it into Oneida River, not Onondaga Lake. And just like right now at Seneca Knolls, we do the same thing into the Seneca River, right?
How long is it gonna take for us to have safe water?
Oh, you're always gonna have safe water.
No,
This has
we're
nothing to
not
do with
always
your
gonna
water.
have safe water.
Your drinking water comes from Lake Ontario, right?
No.
Cisco Lake, Lake
No, it
Ontario,
doesn't come from there.
or Skinny-House, yes it does. Unless you're
It
on a
comes
well.
from Baldwinsville.
We have wells here.
Yeah, maybe it's wells, yeah. But that's not the majority of water in this community goes through these sources. Yeah.
What did you mean by mitigating wetlands?
Mitigating?
Yeah.
So what happens is, on the site, if there's any wetlands on the site,
Mhm.
you can get a permit to disrupt the wetlands, but then you have to build new wetlands.
Yeah, but they're not.
Where?
They're
Right
not
on
the
a
same.
different part of the site.
Where is the houses?
No, man, we're talking about the site where
I know what you're
Mike
talking about.
Yeah,
But it's not the same. I mean, how do you know that wetland, I mean, the wetlands that are there have developed over years.
well, there's certain
Wildlife knows
yeah.
about them.
Yeah, there's certain classifications, right? So some classifications are deviation, we classify wetlands. Others are very, very protected wetlands. On this site that you're talking about, a classification of wetlands that really is more or less from, water buildup based off of topography, right? That sat there for 20, 30 years. And so
That's not very long.
what it is we have, it's a 1,400 acre site. The site north of the power lines, we're going to turn that into all wetlands, that green spaces. So,
I'm gonna give you a break and ask you a completely
Sure.
unimportant question.
right.
When are we gonna get our beach?
Oh, yeah, are you talking about the beach at
Onondaga Lake.
So that's an interesting question. So what we've said is, in Willow Bay, right, we did a study and we looked at the water quality, then we sent it to the state, DEC to look at. And the reality is, at Willow Bay, it's safe enough for swimming, right? And so what I have said is, just because it's safe enough for swimming if people will actually go swim, I will build them a beach, right? And so so
You gotta get rid of us all.
I think what's gonna happen is eventually, I think the generation that's below me is gonna be ready for it, right? And so I didn't want to spend, if I spent $2 million to build a beach and nobody went, I think people would have something to say about it,
That's
so.
a nice clean lake.
It's beautiful. Well, you know what we're gonna do though, and I think this will help normalize the lake, is we're gonna, right now, the yacht club there, the marina there, it needs upgrades on the wall. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna build more slips for the public. And so that the people, because from Onondaga Lake, you can get to any place in the world via water.
Right.
And so that way, and we'll put gas there too, so that, you know, if you want boats to come, you're gonna need gas, right? So that way people can come, they can dock up, they can go take a walk in the park, Village of Liverpool, play pickleball, whatever they want, and then they can leave. But that way, you know, normalizing the lake's activities, I think will help people get to that psychological place. It's very safe. Quite frankly, the water quality is the exact same as the Tisco Lake.
So the boats don't have to go to the electric like the cars do?
So you're turning the wrong guy about that, okay? Yeah. That's above my pay grade. Yeah.
And we have no gas.
Can you speak again to the water recycling and Oak Orchard and all of that, and how that's going to work? How much water gets recycled? Do they use it again? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so you're gonna reuse it, right? Because that's in their interest for it's cost savings. And so a lot of those details are being engineered still, but essentially they're going to take a portion of the water from the lake is sold at a certain rate, and then we give them discounts on recycled water, meaning that water that comes back through either to Oak Orchard or wastewater treatment plant. Once we get it clean, we can send that back to them. And so we're working through all those, but the numbers that were floated out there are probably double or triple more than what would happen to actually be needed. And those were worst case scenarios after 4 fabs were built. So for the first fab, you know, you're going to be talking about a lot less water, but you're essentially going to, water comes through, they are going to pre-treat it before it goes anywhere else, and then they might even be able to take that water and reuse it again. Any of it that they cannot, well, then goes to Oak Orchard, we then treat it, we can then sell them back the recycled water, and then what they don't need then, obviously once it's treated, will get dispersed then.
Okay, yeah, now, quantities, I mean, what's this going to do to the United River?
It won't, yeah, so, look, we can't, you gotta remember the levels of regulations here, okay? You have our permits that we give out based off of what we're regulated at, right? Then the state DEC has to agree, and then the federal EPA. So this isn't a situation where this is you know, very, very regulated. So they look at all those impacts, but
So you're not going to have huge dumps of water into the United River?
no, you won't have all of a sudden homes on Oak Orchard there, you know, flooding from that. Yeah, you won't have that. Yeah.
Can I ask a real fast question about Central?
Yes.
I went to Central, and I wondered, it really was and will be a good school, but it was always going to be a STEM school, and slowly, when is that going to reopen for the education of these people?
Great question. So what we are turning the old Central Tech Greystone building, right?
Right.
Yeah. The core of our, you know, downtown there, we're turning that into a county-wide STEAM school, STEM with the arts. And 60% of the kids will be from the city of Syracuse. 40% of the kids will be from all the other districts working through BOCES. And it's going to be kind of like a workforce development laboratory for all these jobs in that space. I love the question because I got good information for you. So the county now owns the building. We are leading the construction. The school district will lease it from us. But we are, right now, we awarded the roof bid already, and the windows and facade work bid went out, and we'll be having a ribbon cutting ceremony soon. And then this will be ready for the class of the 9th grade class in September of 2025.
How do you get buses for that?
So you'll have, it'll be like BOCES. So if you had a kid that went to Beeville or Liverpool that goes to BOCES now, they would get transportation to the new STEAM school. I don't even know what they're going to call it. But that's how it would work. But Amazon, Microsoft, Micron, all big partners at the facility. Lockheed Martin. I'm sure your former employer will be heavily involved too. Other questions?
Thank you for coming.
Yeah. I'll take one more from you, ma'am.
There's a point over the summer where out of, I think it's like 93 ICU beds in Onondaga County, 8 to 9 of them were available, and my understanding is we're supposed to base our alert system on the number of hospital beds that are available, and our rate was very low, and we were at yellow. What does it take for people to go, we might have a problem?
Yeah, we got a workforce problem with our hospitals, a good time one. And so, you have fatigue that is set in, right? And then you also had the traveling nurses, which has decimated that situation during COVID, decimated our infrastructure.
But shouldn't the sort of concern level be raised?
Oh, man, we run public health, and so we don't run the hospitals, but they're our partners, and we work through them, and we work with the executives from every one of the hospitals on a daily basis on a slew of issues. So,
but I'm talking about there's like 9 beds available, and it's rated at yellow for concern, and I'm wondering why it wasn't orange or red.
2 issues. One, when you do that reporting, you're not talking about physical beds. We're talking about beds that can be staffed at the moment. And so there's not a scenario where there's not enough physical space. It's the workers.
Okay.
And so, but saying that, we do have, upstate's facilities are old and outdated and everything. So we're working closely to try to get, that's a SUNY hospital, the state system, to try to get a new investment there, a very large one that maybe we'll talk about, hopefully the state will talk about. But when that reporting happens, that's a moment in time related to the workforce there. That doesn't mean you can't call more people in, but if you experienced emergency room visits that are not pleasant, a lot of that is driven by the fact that you have people going to the emergency room that should not be going, and the people who are there that need it, then it slows down, and so it becomes a real challenge. We have one of the programs we started at 911 is called nurse navigation. So when we're getting a call from someone, we're trying to qualify, is this a call that we can get you telemedicine, get you what you want? We can even maybe get you a ride to a prompt care, and we'll pay for the ride. We send them there instead of going to the ER. But we gotta get away from the emergency room being people's primary health care, because that's really a huge part of the slot. But it's something that we're working on with the hospitals daily. I met with the leaders of all 3 hospitals last week.
Until you have a single payer system, that's never going to change.
That's above my pay grade, sir.
I'm telling you, that's a fact.
Yeah.
If you go to the doctor, you got no money, they say take off. They can't kick you out of the hospital.
Yeah.
So people go to the hospital and they can get treated.
Yeah. Yes.
But anyway, I thought they did right.
Well, I want to
Thank
say
you.
thank you, and I was attending to the mayor's involvement.
I love it. I love it, Mayor. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. See everybody. Thank you.